Hands up. Good.
So today I'm here with Chad. Chad, can you please introduce me to your current role?
Hello, I'm Chad Ingram, and I'm currently an executive creative director at FCB in Chicago.
And how long have you been there, Chad?
I have been here since September of 2021, so a little over 3 years now.
Okay. Yeah, so you're in ECD, and what kind of clients are you working with at the moment?
Yeah, we have quite a few. So at FCB, we're broken into, it's a pretty big agency. So we're broken into 7 pods, which are like little mini agencies within the larger organization. And I'm in the third group. I have a partner. His name's Desmond. We've been working together for about a year or so, and we oversee a wide range of clients. So we work on Boeing, Xterra Energy, which is an energy company based in Florida. We have Jack Daniels for the North American Trade Organization. So a lot of the stuff you see in bars and retail stores. We work on Barilla Pasta and Vasa crisp breads, which are popular over in Europe, we understand. And then also work on the U.S. Postal Service, Diners Club International, and we got a lot. I'm just trying to like keep track of all these. So that's just a mix of about 10 to 12 clients that we work on a daily basis.
Yeah. And what makes clients come to FCB?
FCB focuses on, they're traditional, like big full service agencies. So I think when clients come here, they come here for, the creative output of how we show up in the world. Within my particular function, I work a little bit in the commerce space. So clients that are looking to drive conversion, with traditional and retail outlets, which has now grown into more of the mobile and social space as well. But what's great about FCB is that we have pretty much every capability in-house. So we work with a studio team, we work with an influencer and social team, we have a content creator group. So pretty much any client need that they're looking to solve through creative challenges, we can typically do here in Chicago.
Yeah. Interesting. And your role as an ECD, what does that involve? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
It's a lot of meetings. We have a lot. It's funny. It's like, I started out as like a designer, and it's like I wanted to create logos, and I went to school at the University of Oklahoma, very small art school. And then I soon realized it's like if you wanted to be an artist, it's like you had to kind of essentially become a commercial artist. And then I got into marketing that way. And I think, as you move up, you start with getting into the creative director world, and that's the path of where you have to start managing people's careers and start delegating, losing a little bit of the control of the creative. And then you start taking on more administrative responsibility, and you become more of a business steward too. It's like you start thinking about like, how do we solve these business challenges through creativity? And then at the executive creative director world, you're essentially responsible for the health of your group. And that's both for your people and also making sure that our creative output is the best in the world, which is no easy task.
FCB here in Chicago, we're a globally recognized agency. We've been the North American Regional Network of the Year at Cannes for the last 6 years in a row.
What does it take to get there and to stay there in today's environment, and how everything is changing so fast now?
You have to be I think as over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen post-pandemic, client budgets they're not growing. So you're learning to be a little bit more agile and flexible. You have to get to the output quicker. I think it's a lot of prototyping and iteration and not being too perfect and sitting on something, because moving at the speed of culture, like you could lose out on an idea by the time the next idea is coming. And we've seen that through TikTok, of where trends are happening, and to put out content, you have to keep up with that. So I think you just have to be rigorous about pushing, respectfully the clients to convince them that this is something that they need to go chase or something that they need to go do if they want to be part of that culture conversation. Our global CCO, Andres Ordonez, he always talked about putting in like the attention to craft and detail into that last 4%. It's like you might be working on something and your weekends, late nights, but like, what is that 4% that's going to push it over the edge? It's like, what's going to be from bronze to gold? That's kind of like the framework of how do we just have so much passion and energy around the work, and just being, relentless in our pursuit of strong creative output.
Yeah, yeah. I guess like as an agency, it's kind of the human resources that are the main like differentiator between different agencies and probably also other resources. But what do you guys do to kind of attract the best talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky in this current climate. We have a pretty, we want to be in the office. I'm in the office today, and I think being in a return to office environment does make recruiting and retention a little challenging, as we're dealing with talent from across North America or even globally. Of like, if you want to work at FCB Chicago, one of the reasons is you need to be in Chicago, and we've stuck pretty hard to that of making sure that we're in an in-office environment. It's hybrid, but just being able to be in the room together, put work up on the wall, rearrange it if it's not working, like what's going to tell the simplest story from beginning to end. It's hard to do that over, Zoom and Teams. Is even as great as the technology is, it's just that human interaction, I think, is what really makes the work better. You just have to take care of the people. Like, we are nothing without our people, and we have to find constant ways to, find inspiration or keep them invigorated to, why they should stay here and not go somewhere else. We want our best talent to stay in this building. And, we have a lot of different employee resource groups. I think we have over 40. So there's a sense of inclusion, belonging for people that if they don't feel like they fit in, there's something for them here, which is one of the great things about this place.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I would like to go over to your own like story and then how you got into the industry yourself.
Sure. So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm from Oklahoma, a very small state in the United States here. And it's just, I grew up wanting to I didn't grow up playing sports. My brother played sports. I was the kid that stayed home and just drew in a sketchbook. But I think I knew from an early age, I wanted to build something. And I was into architecture for a little bit. Then I realized that took more math than I think I wanted to do. So I chose art school, and I went to the University of Oklahoma to get my graphic design, what's called visual communication degree. And I actually never changed my major, which I was shocked by. But I did that in 4 years. And then I decided that I wasn't going to really find what I was looking for in Oklahoma. So I left. I moved down to Dallas, Texas. Didn't have a job at the time. So I was pretty much, living out of my car for a little bit, trying to find. I was doing cold calls. And this is the time when you're writing letters. And this is like post 9/11. And I just pretty much did a road trip tour of the state of Texas. I went down to Austin, Houston, ended up in Dallas, finally found something at a place called the Promotion Network. I had no idea what promotions or, marketing was at the time. I was a junior art director, and I was working on a lot of big clients like Miller Coors and Philip Morris, I say, was my first client that I worked on. So I was essentially designing these convenience store displays. They were all point of purchase things. And I had to quickly get up to speed of what point of purchase was, or just all of these promotional marketing things that were happening, and understanding how could I apply design technique to commercial marketing. And then as I stayed there for 8 years, and I worked on a bunch of different clients. They actually moved me to Chicago back in 2007. I worked on Gatorade, part of PepsiCo. That was a great brand to work on. That was at the height of when they were those was before vitamin water and all the competition started coming in. So Gatorade was the premier sports athlete's drink. We launched the Tiger Woods flavor. We did a bunch of different things for Gatorade. Then they went through a little bit of a rebranding phase, and so then they kind of lost their way a little bit. I started working on a few different other things, and then ARC Worldwide and Leo Burnett called me. This was back in 2009, I think. And so I was in Chicago. I was I'd only been there for about a year and a half. And I was like, if you get the opportunity to go work at a huge agency, you can't say no to that. So I went over there to work on Walgreens, which is a drugstore here. And again, doing a lot of the shopper marketing stuff. So this is around 2009, 2010, when shopper marketing is becoming more prevalent. People are starting to pay more attention to digital tools that shoppers have. It's no longer just all the way down a single channel. We've got multiple channels now that we're communicating at. And then worked on Procter & Gamble for 6 years. And Procter & Gamble is really where I learned the business side of creativity, of really understanding what motivates people. Procter & Gamble, P&G, they were experts at shopper marketing, and they had systems in place for all the major retailers. You had to learn all of the different tools and parts of Walmart and Target and Kroger and all those places. So that really was like a huge learning experience for me. And I made my way up to vice president, creative director at the time. And then Coca-Cola called with Geometry and Ogilvy, and they're like, we want you to be group creative director. I was like, that's awesome. So I did that, went over to Geometry, which is now VML. So they were part of the Ogilvy network, and now they became part of the VML network. So at one point, we had like 4 different names at one point. I think we were VML, Y&R, Commerce. And so then like this is around 2019 and 20, like pre-pandemic. Commerce is starting to become a big deal with all of the different technology that's happening. And I worked on Mondelez International, so worked on Oreo, which was a great brand to work on, and worked with Manuel Bourdet, who had come from the UAE, came to North America to lead the group. Learned a lot of like so much from him of just how to craft ideas into single boards, like can boards. I mean, just really just being a student of like, how do we go and be proactive? We bring clients' ideas. We don't wait for them. And so that was a big learning piece for me. And at that point, I became executive creative director, and then the pandemic happened. And so then we were like stuck in our basements for 2 years. And I think this is where the mental health aspect of being confined into a space really started to take its toll. And we're pitching nonstop. We pitched the global Coke business under WPP. And then I left, and then I went to FCB to work on all of the retail groups here at FCB. And so I took a lot of that knowledge, and I've just kind of found each path that I've done have been like these transferable skills that I can take to my next place. And so coming out of the pandemic, working at FCB, learning the whole brand side of the world, building like big brand building programs, worked on Cox Mobile. We launched a sheep character for them, which was super fun to do within their mobile business. And then, started just slowly winning new pieces of business to kind of build our group together of where we sit today. And so really, how I kind of approach things at FCB is just this full funnel approach to creativity of like, you've got your awareness stuff, and then how do you drive purchase all the way down to the bottom? I mean, so that's kind of the philosophy we've been doing for the last 3 years or so. That was a very long journey answer, but I just took you through a timeline.
But I guess you've also done a lot, so you can't. But thank you for sharing. So you kind of started out in your own car, and then you just worked yourself up.
Right,
and
right. It's kind of crazy when I think about it.
Yeah. It's kind of also inspiring, I guess, like to start from scratch and get where you are now. And I'm wondering, like, where do you think these opportunities have come from? Like on the way, is it your work? Is it your network? Or like where did these come from?
I think opportunities come from, it's you're being in the right place at the right time. I leaned on my network from school at the university. Actually, my college roommate at the time, he was going through ad school at the University of Oklahoma. My fraternity brother, his dad was the financial advisor at TPN. And so when I moved to Dallas, he was like, hey, you should call these people. I was like, what is this place? I don't even know what they do. And he's like, just talk to them. And that was all by chance, I think, of, obviously the hard work and just the relentless pursuit of trying to land something. But being able to have that network and also prove that, like, I'm not some random guy off the street. Like, I'm just going to come in on day one, work hard, and just meet as many people as possible. And that's the advice I've given to people getting into the industry is like, when you come into a place, like, just have the passion, energy to show up and prove that you can make an impact, whether that's small or big. Like your chance will come eventually, but leaders and managers need to see that passion of what you can do. And that's not about like burning people out, but it's about just taking in and absorbing as much as you can, being a sponge to leaders across the organization. That's why I think being in an office is so important, because if you're working remotely, you miss out on those hallway conversations or going to a bar after work and maybe a brief comes out of that, or like a new project, or you might meet someone new that you didn't meet before. So it's just being in the business of networking and working hard and just seeing where those opportunities take you.
Yeah. And I guess like the opportunities, you have to do the work, of course, but there's also like this extra, how do you stand out from the crowd and from the rest, because there's probably others that apply to these positions or want these positions too.
I mean, we talk about here at FCB too, like your superpower. Like, I think we're in a world now where, the speed to market is so quick and everyone wants to do everything. And I think really understanding your superpower of like, what's the one thing that makes you great, and like build around that. Like, what's your one piece of thing that you can contribute to a project. It doesn't have to be everything, but like do one thing really, really well. And I think people will recognize that like if they need something for design, they'll go to this person. If they need someone for influencer, they'll go there. So like you start to build this network of talent that you have little superpowers across the group. And then when you combine them all together, you get a really strong creative output.
Yeah. And when you're in this position yourself, like hiring people, building teams, what are you looking for? Like qualities, personality wise, what is important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to build a diverse team. I think people from different backgrounds, not just hiring the same carbon copy of every Miami ad school student that comes out of portfolio school. I think you get to the best creative when you have diverse thinking, whether that's in backgrounds or like what you bring to the table, like bringing your whole self to the group of people that are passionate about whether it's music or, civility or other things that are going to like, where does that passion come from and where do you get your creativity from and how are you inspired? You're not going to get inspired by being in these four walls. Like, how do you go outside into culture? What are you consuming? Are you writing things down? Like, are you a writer on the side? Are you a DJ? Like, what are your hobbies like outside of because like we don't all live for advertising. So it's like, what other things that make you creative? Like, what are those components that when you put them together, you've got an awesome art director, you've got an amazing content creator, and they're not great at everything, and that's okay. And I think it's just about making sure that people feel welcome and part of a team, and everyone brings that energy and passion to every project they do. Because let's be honest, like a lot of the stuff, the day-to-day work it's not super sexy, right? You might be creating banner ads for something, or you might be doing some in-store shelf materials, but I think when you can work at a place the size of this is that there's endless opportunity. You just have to go find it.
And what has been your superpower? You mentioned like you started drawing and like art as a kid. What's your kind of passion in this?
I mean, the computer has ruined my hand ability. Like, I don't even think I can like write sentences anymore. It's pretty crazy how that happened. I do wish I could get back to sketching, but I think my superpower is really around bringing creativity to the commerce space of, we talk about the best commerce work that comes from a true insight. And I do two things. And this is from Amy Lanzi. She was the jury president at Cannes last year. It needs to build the brand through creativity and technology while driving sales. That's ultimately how creative commerce can impact a client business and drive the business forward. So understanding the ins and outs of shopper marketing / commerce and how you can bring that into a big brand organization. Sometimes some brands think of TV first, and we all know that like that's not going to get you the results you need. Other brands go too heavy on performance marketing and you're absent of an idea. And so without an idea, your brand is nothing. So you can't metric and data your way out of creativity. You have to be able to, pull from different spaces to get something that's interesting and not just perfect all the time.
Yeah. And I would also like to talk about like technology and AI, and it's hard to have a conversation without touching upon these topics. And how do you think this will affect the industry?
A lot of people talk about AI, and I think there's a little bit of there's two sides to it. There's the doom and gloom people who just sit on apps and get scared that their job's going to be taken away. Or there's the people that actually use it as an enabler. I kind of think of it as how social media happened in 2005, that whole boom around, how are we going to give our power away to these people that we don't know who they are. And it's like, well, you can learn a lot from these people and build ideas from a group. It's not top down anymore. It's more bottom up. And I think with AI, it's really an efficiency tool. And I think if people embrace it, like we did the internet back in the late 90s, it'll make your job more efficient. And it'll take a lot of the busy work out of more automation tasks. And so we could use it for taking notes on this call, for instance, without me having to sit here and type. Just little things like that of where AI can improve the daily workflow, I think is great. And also when we get into creative tools, like using an image generator like Midjourney, I think some creatives use it as a crutch now because the clients are expecting full-blown creative by the first round. And because they've seen these images that look so realistic, it's looked like we just shot them yesterday. But I think image generation is amazing. I think using a chat GPT like object to be the start of an idea. I think when people use it to be the entire ideas where you fall into an issue of relying on, you're not using your brain, you're using the robots to write it for you. And I think it's great. It's a great tool to ask it a few things of like, give me an experiential campaign, and it'll give you some things, and you can then take it and tweak it and make it your own. And I think that's totally fine. Like using AI as a part of your toolkit so that you can be a better creative is how people need to think about embracing it and not being afraid of it.
And what about future agencies? Like, you think it's going to change? I've heard people say that you're going to see way less people in these big companies. You can have like only the top talent and use technology for the rest. Yeah. But what's your perspective on this?
Well, I mean, it's very topical, as if you might have seen in the news, Omnicom just purchased IPG, and we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but it's essentially creating the world's largest holding company. And I think we can either use that as an opportunity to be bigger, better, and stronger, or a lot of smaller independent thinking is going to come out of that, of where they, it's all about bringing ideas to clients that can like affect and change culture. And I think, obviously driving sales for them too is important, but just being able to, again, embracing the AI, I think is one thing, but like, yes, it might change. I think, to be fair, that there might not be as big of a need for an entry-level copywriting position, for instance, because a lot of times as a junior copywriter, you're tasked with just write me 50 lines for something. You can do that now. It's not perfect, but you can do that in 10 seconds versus several days. So I can see that changing. I think the entry-level talent's going to be a little bit more challenging to break through. So you're going to have to find more creative ways to prove value. And whether that is, again, being an embracer of these tools and coming in to the market as an entry-level creative of like, here's how I use AI and things to make myself and my work much better and stronger. There's still, I think at the end of the day, everything is born from an idea. You're always going to need ideas. And I'm not sold on the fact that AI can completely replace idea generation. It can do a lot of things, but I think human storytelling has stood the test of time, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. It's just, how are clients and marketers going to use it as a way to move their business? We just saw with Coca-Cola that completely a 30-second holiday spot that they did, and they're very proud of it, which is great. But you look at it as a person that sees these things all the time, and you can just tell that it's funny, like it's share the magic, but the magic is missing from this creativity because it looks generated and it doesn't look appealing to people. And so there's going to have to be a balance of like, you can't just get rid of all the humans. You're going to have to find ways to keep them part of this storytelling that we all need, because we thrive on story.
Yeah, I think we can probably talk a lot more about it, but I would also like to go into your own work. And you have like a few campaigns or projects that you are proud of and that you put very high, and what made them special?
Yeah, I can talk about Great Wolf Lodge for a little bit. So we pitched this business at the beginning of this year, end of last year. And the brief for them was, coming out of the pandemic, they had these big wolves. They were like these big CGI wolves, and they did a great job of getting people out of the house and to Great Wolf Lodge. But I think where that work fell flat is that it didn't show what Great Wolf Lodge was all about. It's a water park first and foremost, but it also has so many different activities for kids and families to enjoy. And so our task was to expose that and really tell the story of how Great Wolf Lodge is a place for families, of where this playful pack can come together and just act like a kid again. So that was kind of part of the brief of, how do we see this work through the eyes of a child, of like, when they walk into a Great Wolf Lodge, you can just tell that their face is animated and they just can't wait to like run in this huge warehouse full of water and all kinds of fun activities. So we had to find a way to build that repeatable structure in people's minds. So we were brainstorming one time, and there was this song, Freak Out, by La Freak. And it was like, Freak Out. And we're like, oh, that's funny. Like, what if we just said like Wolf Out? And so then we're like, well, we can build that earworm. And that became part of the idea. So wolfing out was essentially that moment of transformation that happens when a kid or a family walks into a Great Wolf Lodge and they are just met with endless play. And so we built the Wolf Out campaign to basically a a continuation of what the wolves took them to the lodge. And now we explored what was part of the lodge. So we won the business, which was awesome. And then we got to work and we had to go to production within 2 months of winning. So it was very fast. And we went and shot a bunch of, in water park shots. And we also captured all the other things that part of it that makes Great Wolf Lodge great, like the Magic Quest games or the arcade or the food. So it's that whole experience all on one roof. And we built a full omni-channel campaign around that. And we wanted to create assets that could then be scaled across many different mediums, whether that was sixes or content pieces or organic social. So that was a campaign that was really successful. It launched in right around the beginning of summer this year. And so from a campaign that no one's ever heard about, it helped with media, getting it out there, but it went from 0 to pretty much 60% awareness within the first month. And so now our task is converting those people that are seeing it. Now we want to get them to actually book a place at Great Wolf Lodge. So that's what we're working on right now, is like a Wolf Out 2.0, if you will.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty awesome project we worked on. And another project that's it's pretty recent too, is this one for Protein Plus. So Barilla has a protein pasta. They didn't know what to do with it. And I think they wanted to target people that are active enthusiasts. So, a lot of fitness goals now are around, macro goals, like making sure you get in a lot of protein, and carbs have kind of become the enemy of that. Well, as a pasta brand, they are all about carbs. So how could we tell a story that was going to not alienate the pasta category, but get people excited about a new offering of protein pasta? So we went to a fitness community, which was Strava. And Strava has these workout challenges in their app. So like you can join a challenge. And we created the Barilla Strava challenge. So it was essentially the 17 grams of protein. We're like, okay, if you can do 17 minutes of exercise for 17 days, we'll reward you with some protein plus pasta. Very simple commerce program. And we launched that earlier this year, and we had over 150,000 participants join the program. We saw an increase in sales during this program was running, over 26% sales. And we had over 38,000 redemptions for the pasta. And this was just something that we're like, well, let's just merge Barilla and Strava together and see what happens. That's one of those commerce examples of where you're meeting people where they are. They're not in the aisles shopping, especially the younger generation. So we went to their community and we just made it integrated into their content. So if they were scrolling through Strava, they might see this and be like, I'll join that challenge. That seems pretty easy to do. Then there was a retail component to that. So that was another exciting program that is the kind of proving out how creative and technology are working together with a partnership to drive business forward.
Wow. And what does the creative process look like to coming up with an idea like this? Like, where do you start?
It's a great question. Everywhere. Our strategy team here is awesome. And so I think it's being hand in hand with them of like, they work with their analytics team. It starts with data points or observations of like, we see things happening in culture of this is spiking. So like if there's something that's spiking really high, it's like, okay, how can we go attack that? And so we create a business problem out of that. So using Jack Daniels, for instance, Jack Daniels globally is doing really well, but in the US, its sales are slipping because the category is it's diluted with endless whiskey options. And then a brand that's been around for so long is having a hard time breaking through. So we use, analytics to figure out, why are people shopping this way? Or like, why are they not choosing? They might not even be choosing whiskey at all. They might be going to tequila or another adjacent spirit. And so data will tell us kind of how people are shopping the category. And then we can build a brief out of that. So if a brief is essentially a shopper barrier, what's getting in the way of someone buying something? And then what is an opportunity or an outcome that can then lead to a creative idea? So it's really working with that brief to make sure that it is very tight and addressing the client business problem, but also the larger human people problem. And what can creative solve based on that brief? And how do we do it quickly and also on budget and on time? But we also want to make sure that this is not just work that's going to not get noticed. It needs to kind of stand out and make an impact in culture. So how can we bring talent or other talented people into the group? Like, we might need a content play on this, or we might need an influencer play. So we reach out to different people within the organization to have a little mini brainstorm or a little jam session. And then we get down to a 3-part solution for the idea. It's the insight, like what's that human insight that's going to get people to be like, oh, that's interesting. What is the role of the brand? Like, what can Jack Daniels say that no other brand can say? And then what is the idea in one sentence? I think that where a lot of creatives get into this trap of writing manifestos or long lines of copy, and you read it and you're like, this is beautiful prose, but it's not telling me what to do with this idea. So it's being very judicious on that idea statement. And then once you have that idea statement, you can do anything. You can do trade marketing, you can do experiential, you can write film for it, but you have to ladder everything back up to that idea statement. And that's kind of how we do it here.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And we're actually going towards the end, but I have one more question. And what advice do you have for people starting out in the industry today? Like what should they think about?
I think, yes, it's a tough industry right now, as we've seen. And I think people that stand out, especially in that first interview, I think everything that leads up to that first interview, you're trying to be creative on LinkedIn, or you're sending cold emails, or you're just finding a way to break through that first barrier. I think once you get that interview, that's your chance to prove of how you can be an added value to that organization. And I've seen so many times where I get on a Zoom call with somebody and we start talking and just having a conversation. It's really just about like getting to know them at that point. And there are some that just, they're not interested or engaged, or they just lack a little bit of ability to have a conversation with somebody. And I am hoping that's not a case for this new generation of talent coming in, but it's really just like, act like you care, like have a little bit of energy and passion. Like, you don't have to be the biggest extrovert. Like, we welcome all types of people, right? But I think you have to feel like, why would I bring you here? And I think you can prove to the hiring manager, like, I'm going to be awesome on day one. I'm going to, prove that like I can do these big ideas for you. And I can also be hard worker. And it's really just that passion and energy level that comes through. And someone that you feel can fit into a group of island of misfits, right? Like, not everyone we're looking for people that can bring a diverse perspective into the group, but it has to start with that first conversation of like actually able to have a conversation. And so there's a lot of people that have really amazing portfolios, online books. And then you talk to them and you're like, wow, I start questioning, like, where did this work come from? And I think just being able to talk to your work, present your work, and do it quickly and just get through a couple of pieces. I think back to the superpower of like, what's that one good thing that you're like, what are you really awesome at? And then like, do you want to be a student? We are all students eternally of like learning as much as possible, because the industry is changing so much. And it's just someone that's going to be able to come into a team environment and start making an impact on day one. And that's what we look for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great advice, like especially after the COVID period where you haven't really had a chance to kind of build up these, like going to the office, like how does that even work anymore?
Yeah, we've all felt it too. Like, you get into a big room and you kind of freeze up sometimes, like, cause you're used to just being on a computer you were on it for so long. Then you realize like, we actually have to do things in real life, and you have to be able to reach back into those like people skills and figure out ways to like move the conversation forward. But like, again, it's back to just like people that are they just want to be here. And I think whether that's here at FCB or any other creative industry or group, of bringing that one key thing that you can bring to the table that's going to be that added value that's going to make you're like the missing puzzle piece. You're going to make that group better by whatever you're bringing to the group.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And thank you, Chad. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and
this was
all
great.
The insights. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to add towards the end?
No, I think just the advice for people coming in is, don't be discouraged by the job market. I think the market changes daily, and after the new year, like, things will open up eventually. And I think as consolidations happen, like, there's so much noise that's happening. And I think if you're an amazing writer or an awesome content creator, or you have beautiful design skills, like, just practice your sell story. Like, what's your brand? And like, how are you going to get your brand out? And like, think of those 3 key points that make you special, and bring those to the table, and then follow up. And if you don't hear from people, so many recruiters that just ghost people, and it's unfortunate, but like, just being persistent and relentless and chasing what you want, and ultimately it'll come your way. But this has been awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chad.
Awesome. Talk soon.